Welcome everybody to the Division X Reflections and Opportunities celebration event. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to go over a couple of housekeeping items to make sure that folks are able to use all of the functions available. So you can see at the very bottom of your screen, there's a couple of different icons. Please feel free to use the chat icons for your comments and to engage with the speakers and presenters. We also have a Q&A pod, so feel free to submit your questions there. Some questions we'll answer in written form, and other questions, if time allows, we'll have we'll open up the floor for our panelists to answer it live. There is also an emoji icon at the bottom of your screen. Click on that icon to share your reactions, thumbs up, hand clapping, hearts. Feel free to use that now and show us if you're able to access that. And then as a reminder, this event is being recorded and will be shared widely. And if you are experiencing any difficulties, please let us know in the chat. You can message the panelists and presenters and host, or you can send us an email via divisionxta@icf.com. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed project director of the Division XTA project, but before that, we're going to take a minute to acknowledge the land that we're on. We want to acknowledge the genocide and system of oppression that have dispossessed Indigenous people of their lands, and we honor and respect the diverse and beautiful people that still are connected to this land. With that, I turn it over to Fran Stern.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning for some of you. Thank you all for being here with us. I am Fran Stern, and I have the privilege of being the project director for the Division X Targeted Technical Assistance Project over the last year. We had an exciting and unprecedented year and are so grateful you're with us today for our Reflections and Opportunities webinar. We're also immensely grateful to all the people who contributed to making the project happen and to its success. From those informing and actualizing the legislation, to the Children's Bureau staff and leadership who bought into what we were trying to do and supported the team every step of the way. For our partners and other federally funded TA providers who shared their expertise and knowledge, and to the states, tribes, territories, and communities who were and continue to be committed to ensuring meaningful supports and successful transitions from foster care for older youth and young adults, and who partnered with us and their young people to impact practice. And last, but certainly not least, to the youth and young adults across the country, those I was honored to have the opportunity to work with as members of this team, and to everyone who shared their perspectives, holds us and these systems accountable, and who ensure programs and practices are most supportive of them and their peers. We look forward to celebrating them with you today. So on the next slide, I'll quickly run through our itinerary or our agenda for today. As you can likely tell, we're at stop 1, and you'll hear shortly from the Children's Bureau. Following this, we'll give a brief overview of the Division XTA project. Then, for the meat of our time today, when the team, client, and customer will share their perspective and reflections of some of the year's highlights. Finally, we'll hear from a representative from the team of experts who supported more than 10 states in their efforts to enhance driving and transportation access for youth and young adults. Please buckle up. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Catherine Heath from the Children's Bureau.
Thank you so much, Fran. As mentioned, my name is Catherine Heath, and I'm a Child Welfare Program Specialist here in Washington, D.C. For the Children's Bureau. And I am also so thankful and grateful that I've been able to work on this project over the last year. And it is between myself and other members of the Children's Bureau, including Beth Claxton, who you're going to hear at the end of the webinar. We've been really able to work across the Children's Bureau for the last 2 years to really implement Division X and think through our opportunities to really move the field forward. And as mentioned, on October 1st, 2021, we were able to launch a technical assistance contract that was focused solely on the needs of youth and young adults. And we were able to do some unprecedented efforts in order to dream about how we could actually put young people with lived expertise and young professionals into the driver's seat of being able to actually develop, co-develop, and design a technical assistance arm in our work. And like most of you, I believe in the power of lived expertise to transform not only the John H. Chafee for successful transition to adulthood in our older youth services, but all of child welfare. And it's with great excitement we get to talk about our efforts over the last year to really look at that technical assistance plan that was, again, co-developed and co-designed by individuals and give us an opportunity to reflect on the opportunity to move this work forward. This unprecedented opportunity to really think differently about how we provide our technical assistance will be present in our work going forward at the Children's Bureau. And again, finally, I just wanted to thank everybody who's been part of this team over the last year. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for partnering with us as we move the work forward. And again, thank you so much for everything. And with that, I'll turn it over to our next speaker.
Back to me. Thanks, Catherine. And again, thanks to all of you for being here. So we'd now like to provide a quick overview of the Division X project. We'll share some highlights of our overall approach, and then the team and some of our partners will share highlights of their work together. A note that as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act legislation, a report to Congress is required no later than 6 months after service delivery ends. We are in the process of developing that report, describing the breadth of the work that was accomplished over the past year, and look forward to submitting it to the Children's Bureau for routing to Congress in the coming months. So on the next slide, the graphic on the screen illustrates the service array that was offered through Division X TA. The resources provided through the Division X appropriations allowed for a robust infrastructure and the ability to offer a range of services and supports to states, territories, and tribes, all focusing on improving services for youth and young adults in and transitioning from foster care. In partnership with the Children's Bureau, the Division X TA project worked over the past year to address current and longstanding challenges, collect lessons learned and innovations, and support states and territories in sharing power and centering the expertise of youth and young adults to ensure successful transitions. All we did was directed and led by young adults with lived and professional experience in child welfare. From product development, peer and universal event production, marketing and evaluation efforts, as well as our work in jurisdictions as partners with the Children's Bureau's regional offices and the tailored TA offered to states. We look forward to sharing some highlights of our activities with you this afternoon. This year, and the opportunities to demonstrate the impact true partnership with lived expertise can have has been incredible. We know this is not the end, and that the innovations employed and lessons learned will continue to inform TA delivery to come. We in the Children's Bureau are committed to sharing our successes with all of you, starting today. Madison?
Thanks, Fran. Hi, everybody. My name is Madison Sandoval-Lund. My pronouns are she, her, and I currently work on the land of the Nuuvi tribe, or the Southern Paiute people. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the model for lived experience integration that we leverage from the work of the Capacity Building Center for States to build the infrastructure and support the team of lived experience professionals who were doing the work. So as you all can see in the center of the screen is a circle. This is the wheel of participation. These are the different engagement approaches that our team looks at in terms of how we think about what is the best way to involve folks depending on their interest, their capacity, their bandwidth, their skill level. And you can see inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. And wherever possible, we do our best to share decision-making power and authority with our team members. All of our leadership team is, at least 90% of us are people with lived experience, and the rest of the team, a good portion are under the age of 30. all having lived experience with the child welfare system in some form or fashion. And so all of us in many cases were brought in to inform and provide information to an audience about an issue of practice or policy. And in some cases, when depending on folks' availability and interest, folks were involved or developed shoulder-to-shoulder partnership to execute the elements of our project plan. On the exterior of the circle, you can see our support framework: prepare, support, debrief, evaluate, and celebrate. And you all are a part of our celebration today. So thank you for joining us to celebrate all of our successes, but also to reflect on our lessons learned. On the peripheral, you can see that there are a couple of different considerations and principles that are embedded into our practice. And of course, practice makes perfect, and we're always striving to evolve our work and of course informed by those who are doing the work with us. You can see that we have some key infrastructures in place, such as having frequent communication and check-ins with the support team, competitive compensation, logistical support, especially when folks were traveling for the work. Facilitating peer-to-peer learning and exploring expectations was an ongoing part of our process. Providing folks with coaching, training, and professional development, and also encouraging bi-directional feedback to enhance not only the work that we're doing, but also to support folks' development. One important, on the other side of the screen, you can see responsive and reciprocal, making sure where possible, we're building transformative relationships with folks and not just taking from folks, but being responsive to their needs as they have them. And that means meeting people where they're at and where they are, and being responsive by matching with the right level of support and coaching. Being impartial and objective and making sure that we're working from a very methodical process and being respectful and inclusive of all people. Our project is very diverse, not only in terms of geographical location, but background, culture, and identities. And so being mindful that we all come with different understanding and perspectives, and being open and transparent and building trust with folks in those relationships. Of course, strength-based and trauma-informed. These are areas that we're always growing and learning in, and then engaging folks as early as possible and often and throughout the process. And CQI, continuous quality improvement, being that we're always learning and growing from as we're doing the work and making sure that we're capturing those things and building upon them to improve our practice. And on the next slide, Fran and I are going to take turns back and forth, kind of talking through how we embedded some core principles and practices into this 1 year project made up of almost 20 to 30 people with lived experience executing this work. And many of folks had a lot of different experiences. Some folks were a lot greener in this space and have never done national work, and other people have been doing this work for a little over a decade. So in Q1, we really focus on positive youth development. And with positive youth development, it is really about leveraging the strengths of the young people to help to connect them to opportunities that are meaningful, and they can contribute their knowledge, skills, and abilities. And in order to embed this into our practice, we provided a lot of training and coaching in things like strategic sharing and other professional development topics. We also spent a lot of time doing relationship building, and some of that included doing things like icebreakers just to break the ice, but also to give time and space to check in and get to know one another. And we also provided a lot of opportunities for folks to enhance their teaming skills. So folks were often paired up with other team members to not only practice their skill sets, but also practice giving and receiving feedback so that everyone's continuously improving. And of course, with a lot of the education and training, you also need the opportunity to practice. And that may mean things like managing your time. A lot of our team members have multiple competing priorities. And so we spent a lot of time talking through calendars and how do you manage communication, but professional development might also be all of the pieces around how do you show up in this space and leverage your lived experience and lived expertise to further the work at hand. Now, while you can see that Equity Center TA is at the very end, it's important to note that we started with equity in mind. And it's not only part of our process, but is also the intended outcome of our project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fran to talk more about youth adult partnership.
Thanks, Madison. So building off the foundation setting in Q1, our second quarter was really spent strengthening our practice and nurturing the relationships that we had started in Q1. We hosted trainings and learning circles, established coaching and peer support structures that really focused on enhancing those key practice behaviors. It was also spent establishing the process and protocols needed for successful engagement, exploring shared language, defining roles and responsibilities, all the while understanding that things adapt, and as relationships grow, roles and responsibilities evolve, continuing to ground ourselves in the positive youth development and equity centered approaches that we had really set out in the beginning to uphold. Madison?
Thank you, Fran. And we're moving now over to youth-led. And so as all of this is really a scaffolding learning process, and so of course it's building and building on. And so folks having had the experience to do youth adult partnership, whether it be with a seasoned lived expert consultant or working with folks in the regional office or other staff members, folks were then well equipped to continue enhancing their knowledge and skills, whether it is in self-guided learning or attending national webinars and enhancing their understanding. And one of the great things that we also did in Q3 was a lot of our consultants were leading and developing and initiating trainings and learning circles. One example of this is one of our consultants pulled together a training around psychological safety and walked everyone through those core elements, provided resources, and then also facilitated a conversation around the connection of psychological safety and equity centered work. In Q3, folks were then taking everything that they learned in Q1 and Q2 and hitting the ground running by delivering TA activities such as doing research, designing events, but facilitating events as well, designing evaluations and product designs, as well as practicing project management, not only managing all of the different projects that they may be tasked with, but also kind of managing all of the things that they have on top of the work through the Division X project. And then last but not least, in Q3 was the halfway mark. And so one of the important parts of this work was soliciting feedback and providing feedback throughout the entire time. And as we were about to approach equity-centered kind of technical assistance, we wanted to make sure that we were taking all of the lessons learned and applying them as we enter the last 6 months of our project. This was an opportunity for us to align and realign based off of our shared objectives and goals. With that, turn it over back to Fran.
Thanks, Madison. And like Madison noted, while we have equity centered TA sort of culminating in the last 3 months, it was present throughout. And because of that, really allowed for the final 3 months to be the culmination of the first 9. Regional partnerships flourished and continued to contribute to the design and execution of the tailored TA offered to jurisdictions, what we refer to as the Targeted Assistance Projects, or TAPs. 3 quarters of focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion in services and approach really enabled TA teams to lean into engaging jurisdictions to do the same through direct TA, both in peer events as well as through product development. We expanded our team through the recruitment of 10 Division X fellows, and we did this a new endeavor for us in partnership with our jurisdictional partners who served really as partners throughout the effort. These fellows were critical experts in our TA approach and delivery and became the beneficiaries of what was then a well-honed model of learn, do, teach, building their skills and competence as we partnered with states to do the same. So with that really quick overview, we've organized the rest of the event to really illuminate some of these efforts and our successes through the reflections of those who were responsible for them. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Shaylee.
Thank you, Fran. So I'm going to kind of move us along into the regional office engagement, but first I'm going to introduce myself. So hello, Shaylee Pietmeyer. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a lived experience engagement specialist, formerly known as one of those youth support leads on the Division X project. So as we move into like the regional office engagement efforts, I'll kind of give an overview of the regional work with some of those core values that have led some of our work, and then we'll hear some of those reflections that Fran had talked about from Bob and Eric, who you'll get to meet later on. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Beautiful. So in the beginning of our process for the consultants to become embedded into the regions, there was a lot of thought put into the matching process. And so leadership took into account like the geographical location of both the region and the consultants, trying to stay cognizant of like the environment, any potential conflicts of interest. So for example, a consultant who lives in Kansas wouldn't be in Region 7 or be assigned to Region 7. And then time was also processed. So thinking through like the time zones, doing the best to match what was appropriate, since both regional work and consultants are all in different time zones. With consultants, there was a range of part-time and full-time employees, and a number of different skills and knowledge ranging from new consultants to some that do have their footing. And so when matched, there were conversations about like the skills that they wanted to enhance or grow in. So they were able to do things like peer events or research and learning, and some of those types of things within the region on the areas that they wanted to enhance their knowledge and skills. So thinking through here in this youth adult partnership tips, you'll see some of the things that we want to highlight, right? So these are only some of those types of models that we utilized to support the regional work through partnerships, definitely not all. But as you can see, we utilize engagement resources. So that really helped highlight like co-creation, some of that partnership and authentic relationship building. Madison had talked about some of those icebreakers. So really using icebreakers to get to know one another during these types of meetings. And then also utilizing things that were already made. So utilizing things that are on the Child Welfare Information Gateway or the Children's Bureau's website, and utilizing those to further those tools and resources within the region. There was a co-creation of a role document. So the regional Division X consultants were paired within the region with office liaisons who were program specialists in their respective offices. And so this provided like direct support for the consultants because the liaisons were familiar with the office environment. So they were somebody that we could go to for questions and served really as thought partners for the assignments to support the regions. We had this co-created document that laid out like what our roles were together, the opportunities to grow, so both sides could be supported. And then we've got collaboration and mutuality. So there were multiple opportunities for us, the consultants, to collaborate with their regional liaisons as like near peers through peer events, teaming one-on-ones, and even special projects. And then lastly, in this middle area here, we can see communication. So this is a like foundational part of what we wanted to do here within our partnership. So really setting this as a model for regional work. In collaboration, we saw that like one-on-ones, so thinking through like the processes, those common themes that were being shared within the things that we were involved in, and really learning and brainstorming in a near peer type manner to continue some of those efforts for growth within each region. And then lastly, we'll see this like peer sharing and learning circle type opportunities. So the regional liaisons of like the specialists, these are the even maybe their supervisors and directors supporting the consultants, were able to enhance their knowledge and skills to empower their consultants that were embedded into their regions. And so they got to share like some of those barriers of how to overcome them and think through that, as well as like lessons learned or having lived experience integrated into their region. And it was also a space that they could ask, like, hey, what are you doing in your region with your consultant? And it was another way to kind of near peer in that manner, as well as some of that same kind of environment. There was an environment like that for the Division X consultants where we had like peer sharing and learning circle opportunities. And we did this bi-weekly to advance like our knowledge and build one another to support the work in the regional offices as well. So if we could go to the next slide, I will introduce us and hand it on over to Bob and Eric so they can introduce themselves and hear from them firsthand. Eric, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Shaylee. Eric Warner, I use he, they pronouns. I am also a lived experience engagement specialist with the Division X project, or now with the Capacity Building Center. And I was supporting Region 1, which is comprised of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut.
Awesome.
And I'm Bob Cabin. I'm the regional program manager for the Children's Bureau in Region 1. And we're going to take on these 3 questions. Eric, do you want the first one, or do you want me to check?
Yeah, I think we can pass it back to Shaylee, unless there's anything we have going on.
That's awesome. I would love to hear from you all, see how your partnership between you both has really had on the region. What impact was that? And Eric, you can start, and Bob, follow up with anything that you would like to add.
Beautiful. Okay, so yeah, I guess I passed it back to me. So with supporting Region 1, which again are the New England states, where there's 6 or technically 5 regional office contacts, and then Bob is supporting the work as well. We really had such a prevalent impact when the states were able to see the work that we were starting to do. And that was more prevalent when the mental health tip sheet came out, and we were able to share that document with the vast resources and the modern information that was being shared there. This led to a lot of excitement, encouragement, support, and interest in other projects that could be handled, as well as the state started to see, at least within Region 1, that we are listening to the current needs of the child welfare workforce, as well as the needs of our youth and young adults, which is our primary focus on this project. So being able to see that work led to us being engaged in other state review and data analysis projects, even leading to more informed ideas for our regional peer events as well. And like you were saying, Shaylee, leading even more to our learning circles internally to enhance our knowledge to better be able to support the work that we were doing with our region. Bob?
Thanks, Eric. Well, you kind of understated your role, Eric. You've probably read thousands of pages of reports from our 6 states. But just to add on to what Eric's points, I think when there's technical assistance being made available to states, states just don't jump in because it's available. You really have to instill confidence, or the state agencies and the leads in our agencies, they need to have confidence that the technical assistance is going to work for them. And I mean, that's really a big part of what we did. We engaged with almost all of our states, except possibly one over the last year or so. And it got states thinking about where the gaps were within their agencies and within their service array, and what their needs were. We didn't end up with any particular projects during that period. We did get a TAP application, I believe, from one of our states, but as a result, this work will continue past September 30th, and we've got some engagement coming up with at least one of our states, and probably more, focusing on youth engagement, young adult engagement, moving into the CFSR. So again, it's a process, and it takes time and effort, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
I love that. Thank you for that reflection. Could we delve a little bit more into some of that support that you did with the states and territories and tribes? I know, Bob, you had mentioned some of the work with like your reports and some of those types of engagements, but could you delve into it just a tad bit more?
Well, as I said, we engaged with pretty much all of our states and got some ideas about what their needs were, and Eric was able to develop some resources to make available to some of our state agencies. Some of those, maybe Eric, you can fill in the gaps there for me. Where some of those areas, the key areas that we were able to provide some additional resources.
100%. Primarily related to the driving and transportation resources for our youth and young adults, which we'll hear about a little bit later, and I'm really excited about that part of the conversation. But also in those meetings that Bob was referring to with our states, we really wanted to, garner that trust and let them know we are listening. There are supports out there. We just need to know where we need to divert our energy. And a lot of that came with our educational campaign conversation. So there's research out there that shows that there may be some support needed for engaging in, campaigns to instill confidence and support for our youth and young adults transitioning from high school into college. And so part of the resources that we were able to compile were at least coming together with an outline of what that campaign could look like. So that way the states might be able to just fill in the blanks with the information that they're comfortable with, but also being able to provide in real time updated information related to scholarships, related to what resource are you able to go to if you need support in college, you're not feeling like it's right for you. So in addition to that, we talked about NIDED and NIDED Plus efforts and what that's looking like throughout the region. Really no limit to what we were trying to engage with as a topic, really trying to get states to get on board with us in understanding that youth engagement really is tied to every single aspect of child welfare work. It's just how are we going to be able to tie it back to the work that we want to be able to accomplish in this short amount of time.
Thank you so much. So thinking through, you talked a little bit about like that engagement and trying to get the footing and really get that trust from your region. Could you talk about like some of those ways that you were to effectively or meaningfully partner with the states, or some of those like facilitated factors or successes that worked for you?
Yes, I realized I'm still not on mute, so I will jump in there. It's just one great meeting for me today. But it sounds cliche to say, but really just a humbleness to the approach in the work and an acknowledgement that this is a new process and a new project, and we're both coming to the table with strengths. We're both coming to the table with, some areas that are, challenges. We don't have, everything down pat, but being able to trust that we are in this work together and that we will find the solution together and that we're on board with the same vision and goals really helped, I believe, in Bob and I's relationship. And that transferred over to the work that we wanted to do in the States, which really garnered a lot of the support and opened up the workers that we were talking to really say, well, hey, if you're asking me this and you're really invested, then I'm going to tell you what that is. And I want to see what the result is that you're going to provide.
Yeah, and just to follow up, Eric and I had regular conversations throughout the last, how many months has this, Eric? Been at least almost a year. So, I mean, that was key also in developing our relationship, because we were communicating about what was happening in each of our states, and that was important for Eric to be, in addition to the thousands of pages he had to consume, it was in some ways more effective for these bi-weekly conversations to really get a sense of what was happening in our region.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, for given sake of time, I've loved being able to witness the relationship that you two have. So thank you for being able to and willing to share some of those reflections today. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to our next presenters. And thank you so much again.
All right. Thanks, Shaylee, Eric, and Bob. That was great. So now we're going to move into some overview of our targeted assistance project. These are projects that we got to work with our specific states who applied, and really spend some intimate time with them over the summer working through the things that they seek help on. And in this section, you'll get to hear from folks in their different roles in our teaming structure and that worked on different states. So you'll hear some different perspectives from the work. But we can move into the next slide. So our purpose for the Targeted Assistance Project was to help child welfare agencies build capacity and make sustainable improvements to policies and practices for youth and young adults in and transitioning from foster care. The Division XTA team will leverage its expertise and partnerships with youth and young adults to improve outcomes and advance equity by applying a youth-centered promising and best practices. It included youth and young adult voice in all aspects of the project, which I will say is one of the coolest parts of this work, how much lived experience got to lead the way. For our timeline, you'll see here, this is just kind of a list of the things that we went through to really have folks apply, assess the need, make a plan, and action it together, and really change things along the way as we needed to adapt and change. For our teaming structure, what was really cool here is that we have these different roles to make up a really strong structure to support the project, and to also create capacity that was new capacity for some of the young adults that we were able to bring into the work. So we had subject matter experts with their expertise to come in and help give us perspective, to give us insight. We had project managers who really helped track all of the work we were doing and keep us going in what was a tight timeline, and to make sure things felt organized and things were getting done, which was really helpful to all of us in doing lots of things all at once. We had our technical leads to really help make sure that everything was tightened up just right and good to go out the door. We had youth support leads like Eric and Shaylee, who really helped to make sure that folks had the support that they needed in the work, the direct coaching from like a near peer to really work through any challenges, to figure out how to do something and to be supported in that way. We had the youth engagement technical leads, which is myself and Tet to support all of our consultants, be it in one-on-one coaching or in the team dynamics of the state teams to support the fellows as well. And I want to emphasize here our fellows, which is one of the kind of coolest parts of what we got to do, which is that we got to engage young people with lived experience in their states and the states that applied for a technical assistance project or a targeted assistance project, and to bring them onto our team to get that skill, to contribute to the project. Some of them were contributing to projects that they had developed as proposals to their states already, to kind of have that full circle moment and to also increase the capacity and the sustainability, knowing that our time would end, but these young people would likely still be able to continue working with their state and have these new skills and understanding. So the fellows is something that was really rich to have as part of our work. So just a quick highlight of some of those accomplishments is that TAPS included 7 focus groups, 4 listening sessions, 3 community asset mapping sessions, 177 hours spent in collaboration with states, and 41 final deliverables of focus groups and listening sessions. So a lot of great work that really came out of our time together. We can move on to the next slide. So here you'll see kind of an overview of the states that we had the opportunity to work with across the projects and in our work. Change management, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and meaningful youth engagement principles worked together to support how we centered lived experience in all of our work. In all of these states, we got to do a lot of different things. We worked on their service array, we did focus groups, we enhanced their knowledge management processes, developed trainings, and enhanced their capacity there, and the community asset mapping to figure out what were resources and where were the gaps, and along the way, helping the state build their capacity as well as the young people that we were working directly alongside. So that was something that felt really encouraging and exciting about the work. And it meant that we were tackling the projects that states were coming to us with and getting creative in those solutions, shoulder to shoulder with them the whole way through. So with that, I'll move us on to the next slide. And in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to have some reflection. So what's going to happen is we'll have some panelists come up from our different projects, from our states. We've got 5 states that we worked with: Alabama, Illinois, Indiana, Oregon, and Washington. And some of those states are represented here on this panel, or our staff that were able to support some of those projects. I'm excited to share with you today those folks and to have a little bit of a discussion. So if we could first have Anissa go, and then we'll move down the list to Remy, Gabe, Justin, and Scout.
Hi, my name is Anissa Evans. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Older Youth Initiatives Manager with the Indiana Department of Child Services. And that means that I oversee our Chafee program, or what we would call independent living programs across the state. services and also oversee a lot of our older youth initiatives projects across the state. And so my role with Division X, or the targeted program, was the Indiana State Coordinator for Division X. So what I did was originally heard from our Indiana Youth Advisory Board to understand what projects they would like to work on for our state. And based on that conversation, we completed the application process and luckily selected, and then worked to develop our Indiana team based on our goals for our project. And those members of our team were experts in the field that we worked on. And also, as the state coordinator, worked to ensure that all of our leads within our state team were assigned to their projects and were able to follow through with the tasks of their projects, and to really oversee our state committee and just make sure there are any barriers or issues along the way that we were able to resolve them, and that the workflow went well within our state. So that was my role. Also participated on one of our task teams as well. And so was able to work alongside with our youth, our young fellows, our young adult fellows, if you will, with lived experience, and also work alongside the Division X team. Depending on the task, we were also able to pull in some internal and external stakeholders for each of our different committees based on our tasks. So although our coordinator is a title, I definitely was not alone in this work. We had a lot of people who helped to move our work forward.
Great, thanks, Anissa. Remy, could you go next and give us your introduction as well as your role, activities, and contributions to the work?
Can do. So hi all, my name is Remy Morris. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my role was a fellow in Indiana, which is really cool as I had over a decade of experience navigating the system as a young person, and was able to utilize some of that knowledge to really push this work forward. I don't think that we have enough time to talk about all that I got to work on or all that I got to do in this project, but I think one of the things that I really want to highlight that I got to contribute to, or one activity I thought was just super, super helpful, was asset mapping. I got to do a lot of asset mapping, which is just basically working with stakeholders, youth and young adults, lots of different team members to come together with, resources that we were either aware of, or we actually did some research to find other resources to create this tool where we can figure out like what resources exist, where are they located, what type of people do they serve. And I think that what was really cool about this is that it told us what existed, but also it was a great way to see some of those challenges once it's in one space. And so I think asset mapping really helped us to see like, wow, we have a lot of these type of resources and not a lot of these, or we have a lot of resources in this area and not here. And so I think asset mapping really just helped us to think about what could next steps look like, and stop just thinking about what we're working on now. So I think it really helped us to start thinking for the future of what could be next.
Great, thank you, Remy. That was awesome. Justin, could you go next?
I sure can. Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Hayden. Pronouns he, him, his, and I was also a Division X Fellow for Indiana. And as Remy said, there was a plethora of things that we had to do during this project, but a specific part of our role as Division X Fellows was also to assess where the state was ready-wise in regards to the implementation of the project. And one of those ways that we were able to do that was by writing up research memos. I had a heavy hand in that, and it was really just compiling a lot of information on what the state is already doing as far as best practices wise and programs, and be able to also provide new information and benchmark materials that they could use to enhance their existing programs and best practices, or help build new programs and best practices.
Thank you, Justin. Gabe.
Thank you, Elliot. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabe Foley, currently a lived experience engagement specialist for the Center for States. Excuse my stumbling over the words there. Previously a Division X consultant. I was the lead consultant on 2 of our 5 TAPS projects. This meant that I took lead on collaborating with the state, the fellows, the project managers, and the subject matter experts to design and carry out the TAPS project action plans, which included taking the lead on many of our key deliverables and the events that we held.
All right, and last but not least, Scout.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scout Hartley, pronouns he, him, his. So I'm currently a lived experience engagement specialist coach, the LEAS coach with the center. But with the Division X team, I was a youth support lead and I was an implementation lead with 2 of the states. Just quickly about what it meant to be an implementation lead. In a basic sense, it was really just to work with the internal team about planning elements and service delivery with a particular eye on the action plan and some of the due dates of the tasks. That work was basically shared, as Gabe suggested, between all of us, though. So we really were able to talk in concert about the different elements of our work, how to make sure we were, meeting deadlines with high quality and those kinds of elements. And I'll get into a few more aspects of the specific work with some of the other questions, but yeah, that's just a quick introduction for myself.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Scout. And I managed to forget, but my name is Elliot Hinkle. I use they, them pronouns, and I was a youth engagement technical lead on the project. And hopefully what you're seeing here is a role, the different roles that we all carried and how we all kind of worked in concert with each other. Even in different state teams, we all had a similar structure to make sure everyone had what they needed and could work together to get the work done. So our next question we have, we'll go to Anissa first, is what part of the process was the most valuable in fully co-creating and co-executing the action plan?
So the most valuable part of the process was really the communication, both written and verbal, in person, well, virtual, if you will. And so just having that constant communication amongst the state and our federal partners with what we need to do, what we need to execute, and then the written documentation that was provided to us. The communication from our fellows was also valuable because it helped us with the documents that they provided to make sure that we were able to move the work forward. So again, just the high level of communication was most valuable.
Great. Remy, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, I think the most valuable part of the process for me was absolutely just the constant always having a team. I think that I compare it often to the gym. So if you guys at the gym, you're going to get what I'm saying. And I'm going to do my best to explain it. But I think that with capacity building as a fellow, because we had to do a lot of new things and they pushed us really hard. But to build a muscle, you should be straining. You should be working really, really hard. And I felt like I had this whole team of spotters that wouldn't let me be crushed under that weight, but they let me push hard enough to struggle. So they're like, if you're not struggling, then you're not working that muscle. And so it really did build capacity for me. And so I would try these new things and I wouldn't have any confidence or trust in myself, and they'd be like, I can't help you until I see you struggling. We'll step in when it gets a little heavy. And I think that it really helped me to be so much more confident in my ability to do this work in lots of different ways. But yeah, I absolutely think that was the most valuable part. I felt like people trusted me. I felt like people saw things in me that I wasn't able to see in myself. And starting new projects, I'd be like, I can't do it, and they're like, we don't know what that is, so give it your best shot. We'll come in afterwards and we'll work through it. And so it's helped me so much.
Thanks for me. That's such a great visual. I'm going to take away from today already. It's like, okay, we're working hard for a reason. All right, Justin, you want to go next?
Sure. Yes, very similar to Remy's. I also think the capacity building, especially in the beginning and throughout the fellowship, was extremely beneficial. This work was very high level and very fast paced, and we had a lot of people to report up and out to. And being able, and then we were also working with cross-functional teams as well. And so it was extremely important for us all to know where everyone was in this work and knowing what progress was being tracked. It also gave us the really opportunity to learn each other's roles, positions, and also learn each other beyond our roles. And I think that really helped with at least for me, building the capacity and getting the work done.
How about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I think the emphasis on collaboration, as has been mentioned a little bit, but that collaboration between state, Division X, consultant, engaged subject matter experts, project managers. I mean, it was such a well-rounded and large team for each project. And the emphasis on those groups working in tandem together was certainly the guiding light for me. I think most notably, and a really good example of that collaboration, is the emphasis we put on prep meetings and debrief meetings for nearly all large-scale meetings we held with the TAPS projects. This was a great CQI or quality assurance tool for us over the course of the TAPS projects. I think it really allowed us to make sure that every step of the way, the state was not only receiving what they wanted out of the TAPS projects, but they were involved and collaborated with everything that we did. So just a really strong way to assure that everyone was on the same page before, during, and after any big project.
Great. And then Scout, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm gonna, in a way, kind of highlight everything that everyone already said, because I think the communication was key. I almost put a little spin on it and say almost like it was well coordinated. Even to Gabe's point, like there were frequent meetings, and then there was also email communication, which, in addition to kind of helped keeping the flow of our work, it also helped kind of identify cross-cutting opportunities. So for example, I think I neglected to mention when I was implementation lead, it was with Washington and Oregon. Now, it was super interesting because in Oregon, we were able to really identify how each of our sub-teams were kind of working on somewhat of the same thing. So rather than have this recreate the wheel element, we had discussions through our meetings about how to kind of combine some of the elements and keep some of them separate where they're distinct, but in all ways to make it most impactful and useful for the state. I just think that really came out well through a lot of the coordination. And it again, just also to highlight too, that capacity building and support element too, I think was just super important to see, because I guess, just for a lack of a better way of putting it, sometimes this work can be somewhat particular, and it's really difficult to kind of find your way in this space and be able to adapt to the high level technical language or even the pace of the work. And I just think that there were so many supports to kind of make sure that people were acclimated and supported to the point where they have that capacity built up, even post Division X. I just think it was super cool.
Great. Thank you, Scout. We have one last question for this section, and we'll go back to Anissa to start us. How can jurisdictions take what has been learned and apply it to their work?
What I will say is that states can really take the authentic youth engagement portion of youth adult partnership and really apply it to the work. And I'm really talking about true partnership, not states and youth, young adults with lived experience working side by side together in a true organic way, and foster that relationship to ensure that young people take the lead, building that trust-based working relationship along with our young people or young adults with lived experience, and ensuring that young people can do, and having trust. I heard Remy say, trust the process, trust that the young people are going to do exactly what they say they're going to do, and be okay with that, stepping back and say, yes, write the briefs, conduct the meetings, do it all. We're okay with that. And I feel like that is one of the things that jurisdictions could take away, is be comfortable taking that seat back and really allowing young adults to lead the way.
Nisa starting us with a mic drop. Remy, you ready to go? Follow that up.
No, I'm gonna follow that. I don't know, but I think I'm gonna second a lot of what Ms. Anissa just said, and that is, for me, I think that really paying close attention to the relationships that states and jurisdictions have with youth and young adults, and also being able to compensate. We know that's important, but also like when we're talking about embedding lived experience in the work, then we're talking about like, how do we make sure these things happen? And if we have people like youth who just like keep falling off and we have to keep on getting new youth, I'm like, one of the things I noticed on this project is that we had long-term engagement. Like we had 3 months and we had the same young people showing up for multiple meetings. And I think part of that is because the state doesn't leave a bitter taste in their mouth. I don't know how else to say it outside of like, hey, like if a jurisdiction reaches out to a young person and says like, hey, we have this project, do you want to work with me? And they could fully support what you're working on, but because they don't like you or the state or DCS or whatever that looks like, they're like, I don't want no parts of it. And because they've had these great relationships with the youth and young adults in our state, they were more than willing to come on and say like, I like them. I don't know what we're going to be working on. I had like youth and young adults in our cause who were like, I don't even know why we're here, but Mr. Nisa asked me to come, or, Will Thomas asked me to come. And I think that was just so important. And then they were able to be compensated afterwards. And so I think for a long-term engagement, just being able to think about that relationship and being able to compensate them.
Thank you, Remy. Justin?
Hi, Yeah, so what I have to say is not much different from the amazing women before me, but I'm going to try it anyway. Yes, I also agree. I think having prior co-design opportunities and relationships with the folks that our states and jurisdictions serve is very important, especially before getting to a project of this magnitude. I've had the opportunity of working with Miss Anissa in many different spaces before this. I started out as an advocate, speaking on my youth advisory board, and then when I got to a certain point where I was able to advocate and speak outside of my own lived experience, I started to making sure that I was studying, getting information, I was reading reports, I was being able to work with Remy and host focus groups and be able to speak with our young people and getting that information and making sure that we're understanding what's going on within our state. And I think with all that being said, getting to this space, I think that aided in my success as being a good consultant in order to be able to represent my client, which was the state, because they already had that pre-established trust within me and my other fellow in order to do this work, and also made it easier getting acclimated to working on a federal level like this.
Absolutely. Relationships are so powerful, and that consistent one throughout, for sure. Gabe?
Thank you, Elliot. I would highlight the value of bringing lived experience to the table, of course, but looking past that lived experience to really see the strengths of everyone that was brought to the table. In addition to the lived experience that the Division X team brought to the table, the fellows were engaged in many different aspects of the work as well, and in some instances engaged in more aspects of the work. As Remy and Justin have shared, and I've noticed myself in working with Oregon and Washington and the fellows that we had helping those states, the fellows learned a lot of really valuable lessons from being brought to the table in this capacity. Engaging youth in this way was a great way for the state to accomplish tasks while also building the capabilities and capacities of the youth that they serve. And I think it's a great testament to the value of looking beyond lived experience. Of course, we want to bring lived experience to the table as much as we can, but we want to do it in a meaningful way that really pulls out the strengths and unique skill sets that everyone who has lived experience can bring to the table. I think Division X and the TAPS projects accomplished that really well, and I think it's something that we can all take forward into our next steps this next year.
Yeah.
Gosh, well, I have nothing to add per se. I mean, I just think yes to everything, all of the above. I just think, I guess the way I want to kind of frame it is almost like really calling out what a demonstration this is of the power of lived expertise, and also the power of having like an inclusive system that's really supportive for these spaces and opportunities. Just because quite frankly, like lived expertise is really a valuable input that helps with planning activities, that keep the focus on the impacts of youth and young people and anyone who's really touched by the system. But particularly, we really showed that this team of young adults can carry out like an immense amount of high quality, meaningful and impactful activities. Elliot mentioned a whole bunch of reports, focus groups, listening sessions, community asset maps, things that are really involved and sophisticated kinds of projects. And we did it with gusto. And we did it with a kind of, I don't know, it's just a really, really beautiful sight to see, and also very telling for the power of lived expertise is, again, an input for really how to do systems change. And then lastly, just to really show how these kinds of partnerships are possible, just as Anissa was suggesting, when these capacities are really in place and everyone's at the table and willing to want to have this partnership take place. There were layers of support that people discussed, regular coordination, frequent internal meetings, coaches and fellows met. And then there were a whole bunch of sub teams, but there was this kind of real great synchronicity with how everything kind of unfolded and was put together, that I really just kind of hope that my commentary ties together a lot of what everyone was saying about the power of these partnerships.
Thanks, Scout. And thank you to this panel of wonderful folks that I've had the pleasure to work with this year. I appreciate all of you. I'll just wrap us up by saying you could hear some of the themes throughout, which was communication and collaboration, coordination, training and support, having continued engagement and relationship. Something that was huge for us is that we had 90 days from the beginning to end to implement these TAPS projects. It's not a small amount of time to do something really quickly. And what was really important is that we had relationships, trust, communication, and a structure to really function in. And I think the last thing I'll say is that our team has valued relationships so much. That's one of the things that we do in every meeting is we do icebreakers. We take time to get to connect with each other before we dig into the work. And that is so powerful and important. So make sure you make time to do that because it can make a huge difference. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tet Tet. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to TAPS team. If we can go to the next slide, my name is Tet Tet Rogers. I am the other Youth Engagement technical lead of the Division X project who helps lead and support the people that we have in this great, robust team. With me here is Antonica Frazier, Dominic Freeman, Helena Keller, who will do introductions in our next slide. But just a quick overview about our products and peer groups. During the Division X TA project, the Division X team accomplished creating 9 products and 7 peer group events for the independent living ETV coordinators across the nation. As you can see on this slide, there were several different topics in all areas centered around integrating lived experience and being youth-led. Through the process and conceptualization, the Division X consultants took lead and received support from subject matter experts from their respective fields to execute deliverables you see on the screen. This work could not have been done without either partner, and it was effective due to collaboration, bidirectional learning, and opportunities created for peer learning. Another note is the products were informed by the peer groups. We also pulled in information from research all across to inform the events and the products to make sure that we're providing folks with evidence-based practice, research informed, and also the experiences that we all have. Each of the events and products are centered around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and authentic youth engagement, which again allowed young people to truly lead these efforts. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So I'm going to pass it on to Antonica first to introduce her role and what she played in the products and peer groups, and then to Dom and Helena.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Welcome everybody. My name is, please excuse my background noise if you can hear it in the distance. I have a beautiful 16-month-old daughter named Jasmine. She was also an unofficial member of the Division XTA project. But my name is Antonica Frazier. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. And I'm currently one of the lived experience engagement specialists, formerly known as one of the Division X consultants serving on the project. I served as one of the peer events lead, and I served as one of the lead consultants for 2 of the products. We pass it over to Dominique.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dominique Freeman. All my colleagues, friends, and family call me Dom, and I served as a Division X Youth Support Lead. So in that role, I had the awesome privilege and opportunity to serve as a coach and a resource and just support to other former Division X consultants. And I use she, her pronoun.
And Helena?
Hi, everyone. My name is Helena Keller. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm a writer and content developer at the Capacity Building Center for States. But for Division X, I served as a technical support on the product development team.
Thank you all. So my first question for you all is, how did you contribute to peer events and product development? Let's start with Antonica.
Okay. So for me, when it came to the peer groups, I contributed a lot to assisting with designing session design. So that pretty much a session design is providing a layout of your presentation. Pretty much what do you want your presentation to look like, breakout rooms, activities, content, and things like that. I had the chance to assist with gathering research and resources when it came down to the PowerPoints and for the designs. I had drafting power, which was facilitating, co-facilitating the events and leading breakout rooms. So that's pretty much some of the things I did as a peer group support lead. For products, I contributed extensively from drafting the product to adding content, research, collaborations, participating in meetings, things like that, leading them, emails, etc. So those were like pretty much some of my roles and how I contributed to the peer events. But not only that, I was able to utilize my lived experience in and out of care to be able to add input, the chances to use my voice, which was something meaningful to me.
Thank you. Dom?
Yes, very, very similar to Antonica's role, and getting a little chills just hearing about it. So I contribute in the same ways, but I also want to highlight the ways that I contribute behind the scenes. There was just a lot of work that went into our peer events. And so just being able to do the note taking for some of the events, making sure that attendees had those notes that couldn't attend or just needed that information additionally, making sure that those resources went out, hosting those breakout sessions, putting together the jam boards, making sure that we had different methods for folks to utilize their voices and perspectives and highlight the great work that they were doing or some of those challenges that they were having. So I really liked being able to be a thought partner, tech support, coach for the peer event team.
Thank you, Dom. And one thing I want to add towards the coaching role she also had was supporting others in presenting, practicing their slides, being able to really help feel confident before our events too. And then Helena.
Yes, so unlike my role at the center, I was not the lead of product development teams. That role was played by the lived experts on the teams. So I provided skill building, technical assistance, mentorship, and review as needed for product development. And I just wanted to say that it's important to note that on Division X, that the product or resource development process was flipped. It flipped the process most of us are used to. Sort of reverse. So folks with lived expertise were not just asked to provide feedback on previously developed materials, they led or partnered on every stage of resource development from the very beginning. So that goes from like deciding what a resource would look like, what it would contain and developing the outline, drafting, design, as well as project management and team leadership. So this was a really different way of working.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's such an honor to have so many different experts, but all y'all taking the time to really build the capacity of each of our consultants in their respective work and just being able to show like that true capacity building efforts that we can do. So my next question for y'all is, what part of the process was most valuable in fully co-creating this work? Antonica?
Okay, so the first thing that popped into my mind would be the peer support that we had. It was very helpful for me, both when it came to the peer groups and for products. For the peer groups, the peer support is very helpful when it came to having extra eyes reviewing our session design, having all hands when it came time to like drafting our PowerPoints, when it comes to co-facilitating with each other, having those extra scheduled check-ins. I thought it was it really helped me. It gave me the space to ask questions if I needed them, if I needed extra help. The team was very willing to offer that. So that was one of the part of the process that I found very valuable. Another part that I found was having that continuous feedback, being able to, you submit your work, as difficult as it may be to receive some of that constructive criticism. It may hurt at times, but it's really helpful because it really helps you develop more as a professional. It's a little bit easier as time goes on of receiving the criticism because it's coming from a place of love and not hate. It's doing this work. There were those constant prep calls, those meetings, those check-ins for both products and peer group, which I found very valuable and really helped me grow throughout the process.
Beautiful. Thank you. Dom, what about you?
Yes, I would say, there's so much value to all of it. I think the most valuable part was making sure that we were intentionally walking the path that we were trying to get to. And so we had a peer event on developing and enhancing youth-centered practices. And so in our design for our peer events, we were making sure that we were including those practices when we were working together with each other. And so that was really valuable to me to build and learn while I'm in the process. So, but also just building my capacity, being able to do research, learning about different intersections for youth and young people and then from foster care. And so being able to, utilize my expertise, but also those best practices and the research of my peers and things that already existed. So I think just being committed to always ensuring that we were using those best practices in our design and implementation.
Thank you. And last but not least, Helena.
Thanks, Tet. So I just want to lift up the mentoring and skill building part, that there were some of the most important parts of resource co-development. So the idea is that I would be, providing support for folks who wanted to learn different skills around the process of content development. So for example, drafting an outline, developing narrative content from an outline, doing research, responding to feedback, or reviewing. That was just making time to do those things was really very important. And I want to lift up something that Elliot said on the last panel around trust building. And none of this work could be accomplished without, team members developing trust and respect for each other's expertise. So this was developed through informal conversation and icebreakers, but also by sort of this like baseline idea that we all took each other's expertise seriously and respected it and treated each other as equals. I think that provided a really great foundation.
Thank y'all. And that's a very valuable part. I think it goes back to the lived experience model where that bidirectional learning is so important. It is what's really allowed us to have the success. So with that, how could jurisdictions take what has been learned and apply it to their work? Antonica?
So one of the big things for me is starting to have those conversations with folks about exploring how are they already engaging with people with lived experience? How are they already working with those adults? And then if there are those who are already working with young people, then how are their voices and their experiences being valued? Young people are more than just their stories. Their experiences doesn't just make them, there's a lot more to them, and they have so much to bring to the table. That beautiful collaboration between a young person and adult, it can create something beautiful, which is what we were able to do. So I think that would be something beautiful for jurisdictions to be able to start having.
Thank you. Dom?
Yeah, I would say there's no secret that a lot of our work happens in silos, and I think that's across all fields. And so really being intentional about creating that space for peer-to-peer learning, because I think it's important to have spaces that you have that resource sharing and you're fostering and building on that collaboration. So this can happen in small group activities, but even if you start to do that with your lived experience, your young people, your parents, your IO service providers, your boots on the ground, and create some spaces where you can deepen your understanding and foster connection. I do think that it really breeds a lot of innovative and transformative practices and ideas.
And last again, but not least, Helena.
Thank you. So I want to share something from my own experience of serving as a technical support on Division X. So I learned that creating co-equal partnerships and ceding power when you're used to having it doesn't happen automatically, right? It's something that a person actively does, this process of stepping back and letting others take the lead. And that it also can sometimes feel uncomfortable if you're not used to it. It's like a muscle you're learning to use, using, Remy's gym metaphor. So it's not going to feel great right away. But if you practice this way of working, this process of consciously ceding power, it can become the norm. And I also wanted to say that leadership, agency or project leadership, support in this process is really critical, because without it, there's no space for that to happen.
Exactly. I think that is many of the different elements that we have between TAPS, between our regional work, between this work, and all the other aspects that you'll get to hear. But something else I think to leave with jurisdictions is that this work is, we know it has its challenges, but there's so much reward to it, and know that you can continue working on it, you can continue building on it, and that it's not something that happens overnight, but something that you have to be intentional about, build that trust, build the relationships, and really continue to make the difference that y'all are wanting to do. And so with that, I will pass it on to Crystal for the next slide.
Thanks, Tet. Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Saruya, and I was the project manager for the Division XTA project. Super happy to be here with all of you. And Jerry from Paving the Way is also here with us today, and you'll be able to hear from him in just a little bit. So please stay tuned. So with the driving and transportation assistance, known as Paving the Way, Embrace Families from Florida, as well as Treehouse from Washington, partnered to be able to become Paving the Way on behalf of ICF. As you see on the screen, there was 3 types of technical assistance provided to states and tribes and territories to expand access to driving and transportation. It's important to note that there was set aside funding in Division X legislation for the paving the way and driving assistance, technical assistance, as states and jurisdictions have expressed that this being a need, and throughout the technical assistance, states and jurisdictions definitely discussed how this technical assistance definitely met the need that they were looking for. So as you see on the screen, tailored services with direct individualized services, and Paving the Way was able to serve 10 states and jurisdictions, and throughout the tailored services technical assistance, Paving the Way was able to access the current resources or the current services and supports for young people for driving and transportation needs. They were able to review the existing driving laws as well as the foster care current structure, and they were able to finally develop and deliver a plan through all the interactions of the technical assistance conversations that they had with states and jurisdictions. On the next slide, what you'll see is Paving the Way services. So throughout the time of Paving the Way, they were able to put on 4 live webinars, 3 of them which were topical areas that were really, from the call of the state and jurisdictions, was really a need. And they focused around funding, insurance, and buying cars for youth and young adults that are in foster care or currently transitioning out of foster care. Another part of Paving the Way is they had office hours on a monthly basis when any state and jurisdictions or tribes were able to attend, to be able to ask any questions, have some peer-to-peer dynamic, or just run anything by the Paving the Way team, even if they weren't part of the 10 sites that applied for the technical assistance. As you see here as well as the regional consultations. So a lot of our, or some of our 10 states that applied for the TA were in the same region. So we took the opportunity to be able to have regional meetings where they were able to be able to share with one another, that we would be able to update the regional office liaisons on what was going on, the regional office RPMs. So we definitely didn't do anything in silos, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page with the work that was happening. And last but not least is the one-pagers that are yet to be released, that were really taken from the lessons learned from the Paving the Way technical assistance. And again, the one-pagers that will be released focus on insurance, data collections, options for car ownership, working with tribal jurisdictions, as well as marketing and outreach. So with just that brief overview of Paving the Way, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry to introduce themselves before we hop into the reflections.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Jerry Glenn, pronouns he, him, his, and I'm with Embrace Families in Orlando. I'm one of the 6 consultants we had working on this team doing the work. All of us at Embrace Families were very excited to be part of this team, to work with ICF, to work with the Children's Bureau, and our partners at Treehouse, which is another nonprofit in the state of Washington that's been doing this direct service like us with the foster youth in our state, providing the access to driver's license and cars. And it's we believe this is very important work as part of normalcy, and we're very excited to be able to share our experience with the states. Back to you, Crystal.
Thank you so much for that, Jerry. So just starting with the first question, what are your key takeaways from the driving and transportation TA efforts? And I'm sure there was a lot of them.
Yeah, so it's more of a question of narrowing down some of them. So the big one that I think is really a struggle is that the data is generally missing. When we went to the states, we just don't know. We don't know. We generally believe that very few youth are getting access to driver's licenses. But the SACWIS systems we have, this, in the couple of states that have the CWIS system, do not track this information. And depending on the state, they may need to invest in, some sort of software to be able to make progress, which wouldn't be expensive. But also each state is different. For some folks who've been doing this sort of consulting across many states, that may not be a surprise. One of the great advantages we had of being able to provide a blueprint for each of the states. But the uniqueness of the states is especially true in dealing with older foster youth. And it allows the states, as they develop these programs, to think about which subpopulation of older youth who are experiencing foster care or former or young adults who previously experienced, which ones they would want to serve. A third sort of takeaway is very little is being done out there to support older and former foster youth in getting access to cars. The Annie Casey, Jim Casey initiative has some in some states with a match savings program, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done in this space to truly get our youth to be able to have access to transportation beyond getting their driver's license, which is a critical first step. And then the last takeaway that I would suggest is few states have been involving our youth in the planning process. And we reached out and got the youth voice in this process. And the youth tend to be the strongest advocates to making this a practice or legislation in the states such as ours and in the state of Washington. However, the youth have not been involved with the planning process when it comes to developing the program. Shout out to the state of Maine, one of the 10 states we worked with, that very much has had the youth at the table and will have the youth at the table and young adults at the table as they plan the process.
I really appreciate that, Jerry, and I really appreciate the driving transportation. That's the normalcy that young people need, right? And it's past just getting their driver's license. It's really thinking about that support for them to be successful. And sometimes that's, buying a car and even support with insurance. So I definitely appreciate that. So looking at the next question, how can jurisdictions take what has been learned and apply it to their work?
I sort of highlighted some of that in answering the first question, but I wanted to highlight a couple of other ones. In order to be successful in the states, it will require some partnerships. It's not just the department or the child welfare agencies that are doing it. You need to have partnerships. We had the benefit through the Children's Bureau reaching out to counterparts at the Treasury Department. I'm sorry, not Treasury, Transportation, one of those T's, Transportation Department. That we developed a partnership with an association of national stakeholders in traffic safety education. And it really connected us with the driver's schools, which of course is part of this effort at getting youth behind the wheel. You'll also have to have a relationship with the equivalent of your Department of Motor Vehicles. So because there's going to be some twists and turns as youth who aren't in a traditional family need to go through this process. Key is to win over the Foster Parents Association. People are afraid of this. They're just fearful of letting youth and young adults get behind the wheel of a car. They shouldn't be. I can go into a whole thing why they shouldn't be, but they are. And then, as I said, the youth need to be part of the partnership. The other big takeaway is that insurance is so important. That's another sort of partner, but it is that the state has to recognize that in almost every state, you have to buy insurance for someone under the age of 18 to be able to get access to a driver's license. And that's the big sticking point, the big hurdle. We can get over that. We've done it in the state of Florida. They've done it in the state of Washington. Kansas is in the process of doing it. Indiana, Delaware, several states are in the process of doing it. So it can be done. But the states need a lot of convincing and support to make this investment. And the fear of the caregivers to put youth on their insurance can also be overcome. But the insurance is the biggest barrier. And it is possible. And I encourage states to work at overcoming that barrier.
Thank you so much for that, Jerry, and for all of your takeaways. And so the audience, when we send out the PowerPoint, we encourage you all to watch the previous webinars. A lot of questions probably came up when we started talking about insurance and data collection and buying cars for young people. And the webinars will definitely provide some insight to all of those topics. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Madison for our Q&A.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who stuck around almost to the very end. And I'm going to invite all of the speakers and presenters to join on camera just to recognize and see the beautiful faces of that not only just this team is so great. So thank you all for being a part of this work. There was a question that was submitted in the Q&A pod that we want to take a moment to answer. Tara asked, the young leaders share concrete challenges in doing the work with states, counties, and private agencies around advancing equity and elevating youth voice and informed choice. What is something that still surprises them in doing this work, and what are the older seasoned professionals still not getting about this work? I do have Remy and Justin queued up to answer this question. Remy, do you want to kick us off first?
Okay, I'll be really, really quick because those are a lot of questions. And I think that there's lots of ways you can answer it. I'm going to go a different way because I know Justin's going to talk about something else. But so for the first question, I think one of the challenges, and I'm going to specifically talk about being an advocate and not a consultant. Those are different. But the reason I'm doing that is because I feel like being an advocate is one, easier to become, and a lot more common that you'll see working with states. And so I think in that area, one of the concrete challenges is just budgets and being able to be compensated. I think what ends up happening is young people have to decide between what's more important to them, and that's having money to live or doing work that's super like they're passionate about. And so we end up with advocates in spaces talking about really, really big things, which take a lot of time, effort, practice, a lot of mental effort, etc. And we end up in those spaces and they'll be homeless or can't pay their phone bill, but they're doing all this big work and making changes, which is very scary to me. Or you end up with advocates who just leave because they have to decide to work regular jobs instead of being able to really put that effort toward making that change. And so those are that's a concrete challenge that I see often. And I don't think people should have to make those type of decisions. The second question, what's something that surprises me is I'm always surprised that people don't see how they aid in the culture of foster care that exists in a lot of this work. And so I'll talk about things like, we talk about tokenizing, but one of the things that I see often is as an advocate mostly an advocate, again, I'm talking specifically as an advocate because I think that this is important, is being replaceable. If you're a foster kid and you start like becoming too big of a problem, and not just bad, but like you start asking for more things, they'll get rid of you and get a new foster kid. And I see the same thing happen in advocacy. If you start saying, hey, I can't do this work unless you pay me a little bit more because I have bills, they will say, well, we can't pay you, and they'll find somebody who will do it cheaper. And there's literally a culture of being replaced. There's dog eat dog. So you get into this work, and there's other, when they finally do find a good space, a lot of advocates will fight for that space because it's like, when you were the first kid in a foster home, you don't want someone else to come in and take what you just found that's good. And so sometimes there's a culture of that. And I'm like, a lot of the workers are aiding in that existing. If we stopped and said, how am I making this culture exist? And it's so surprising when I tell them that. They're like, I didn't do anything. I'm like, yes, you are, but we ain't gonna talk about it. And then, sorry, I'm talking fast. I'm trying to get through all this. What are we older, seasoned professionals still not getting about this work? And that is, if the traditional way of things worked, y'all wouldn't be asking for new people. So start trusting those new innovative things, because it's like, we're not going to keep doing it the same way, because if the old way worked, none of us would be in these spaces, none of us would have jobs. And so it's showing that there is something broken. Don't be scared to try different things, because youth and young adults are going to come in with some things that are going to be scary and new, and they're probably going to work.
Justin?
Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to try to encompass everything that was asked into like this one statement. But I think a big significant challenge that I still see is I think that a lot of states, jurisdictions, and agencies love the concept of co-design, but haven't really done the necessary housekeeping to make sure that people are able to come into an environment that is conducive for actual co-design work. And I think we see a lot of that with everyone, and of course, we all want to be on the right side of history. We all want to make sure that we are being a part of the right change and everything like that. But I think making sure that we're getting our house in order, making sure that internally we are having a clear line of open communication with one another. There is psychological and physical safety for all and everyone. I think once we're able to engage with people's lived experience, it's easier for us to do that. And I also agree with Remy. I think compensation and making sure that we are having proper training and ways of engagement, I think definitely aids in this work and ensuring that everyone is feeling welcome and they're able to contribute effectively.
You both are so masterful of answering a very packed question in one breath. So excellent job. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Beth Claxon to kind of provide some closing statements. We have a ending photo, but that's pretty much it. Beth?
Good afternoon. My name is Beth Claxon, and I've just had the honor and privilege to serve as the contracting officer representative. And even though my role has been quite small, it's just been mighty learning and experience for me. So extremely grateful. As we're closing, we would love if you could share some of your reflections from today's presentation or work that you may have completed with the Division X project in the comments section. So for me, really quickly, and this will be repetitive of some of what you've heard today, I think the connection was just so important for me. The team always prioritized the icebreakers or check-ins. It really recentered me, and I think it fostered trust and really helped in establishing relationships, which allowed us to dive a bit deeper and share more candidly, that produced more rich and robust products. And then observing the relationships between the Division X team and the regional offices was quite impressive. Their expertise and energy took collaboration to another level, and through those solid connections, I think projects benefited and progressed in ways we had not seen previously. And then a huge thank you to each of you for joining today and your commitment and your time to really improving services for youth and young adults. A special thanks to the entire team for all of their brilliance and energy throughout the project. Again, it's been a pivotal opportunity in my professional journey, and I'm especially thankful for the connections cultivated through our work together. To my colleagues across CB and the regional offices, thanks again for your commitment to the project and ongoing work. You are a critical ingredient in the success of this project. Also want to acknowledge Catherine Heath for her contributions and leadership through many years. And the Center for States team for providing their model of lived experience integration and all of the foundational work that only strengthened Division X. So let's keep the momentum going. Please continue to leverage and check out the work that this dynamite team has produced and created. Visit the Division X website. Share the lessons learned with your team and leadership, and continue to identify opportunities for youth-adult partnership to enhance and improve systems. And feel free to reach out to our Center for States team for ongoing capacity building projects. Thanks again.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it, Fran, anything else you want to share before we wrap up? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. And any final words from anyone on the team before we wrap up and close? Tat, Elliot, Crystal.
Just a huge thank you to the team and this really engaged audience. It's been awesome seeing the reactions and seeing your chat. So very excited about what you all are going to do and take out into the world from us. So thank you all.
Just thank you all for the hard work. Everyone here is just a small portion of this entire team, and this could not have done with every single person. Thank you to the support and commitment and just the trust that we have from our Children's Bureau partners. We could not even think of doing this work without you all and the trust that y'all have and the expertise that we bring. So again, just that youth adult partnership is so important, and thank you all for just fostering that with us.
Thank you all again, and we hope you all have a really good day.